All right, folks. Let me just get the Facebook going and then we can start. We are covering SpaceX's rescue of the stranded astronauts on the International Space Station who have been stranded up there for more than 9 months, mind you. We're only expected to be there for 10 days and they're about to dock here any minute in the next 13 minutes. So we're going to get right into it and live stream that, folks, so we can keep everybody up to date. And just let me get the Facebook going and come on. There we go. All right, cool. Welcome, everybody. We are live. We are going to be covering the International Space Station rescue or the SpaceX rescue of those stranded astronauts on the International Space Station. They are about to dock in about 13 minutes, so I think we should get right into it. I'm just going to start screen sharing and go right to the live stream we're watching from here. And so we can all watch it together as things unfold, and then we'll talk about it after.
We're going to stop based on the calls, and we can do some final alignments there and final checkouts. But so far, so good for Dragon. About 28 hours after liftoff now.
After lifting off from the Kennedy Space Center yesterday afternoon at
You hear it okay, Robin?
7 p.m., completing the docking.
Right now, barely. It could, and then it drifted way low.
Okay.
And so Dragon is now less than 100 meters away from the International Space Station as it continues to make that final approach. And so right now we're seeing those live views of the SpaceX mission control team here in Hawthorne, California. And typically we'll go back to these views when we do have those brief loss of signal between the International Space Station and Dragon and the ground. And we'll regain those views shortly. It's just a handover between satellites. So that tracking and data relay satellite system that the International Space Station relies on, they have brief handover period between satellites, which causes a loss of those views periodically throughout our coverage.
Kind of like going from cell phone tower to cell phone tower.
And so let's see, Dragon is less than 80 meters away, so continuing to approach waypoint 2, about 60 meters to go until it reaches waypoint 2. Again, we are expecting Dragon to hold at waypoint 2 for just a few minutes to ensure final alignment, to ensure lighting conditions are good before we have that final docking. We are expecting that docking to take place around 9 a.m. Pacific, a little bit later than that. And right before that final docking takes place, we will hear that call for CHOP that we mentioned previously, which is the crew hands-off point. So right after you hear that call is typically when that soft capture takes place.
And that CHOP call that we've been talking about, and basically what that means is the crew can no longer manually abort Dragon away from the International Space Station if there should be a reason to do so. It would all be based on Dragon's automation at that point. Everything going very well for Dragon as it continues to approach the space station. The crew monitoring the automated approach for the vehicle, as well as any escape options they might have to do, but again, not expecting to have to use those.
Station Houston, on the big loop, the no exercise constraint for docking begins now.
What?
Station copies.
And so you did just hear a call up from the Capcom or capsule communicator at Mission Control in Houston to the crew on the International Space Station, mentioning that the exercise constraint has started. So typically when you have visiting vehicles such as Dragon arriving and departing the International Space Station, there are constraints on crew exercise, and that's basically to prevent additional loads from being imparted on the station during these dynamic operations.
And I love this sort of night vision-esque view here from Dragon looking at the International Space Station. So this is a view from the Dragon Endurance carrying the Crew-10 crew.
From their
The
perspective.
docking port there is in the center of your screen, sort of being illuminated every few seconds by that light from Dragon. And what I love about this is you can see the Crew-9 Dragon directly above that docking port. And of course, Crew-9 going to be coming home after a brief handover period with the Crew-10 crew. And then inside of Dragon Endurance here, you have Commander Anne McLean on the left-hand side of your screen, pilot Nicole Ayers on the right. Next to Nicole is Roscosmos cosmonaut Kirill Peskov, and on Anne's left is JAXA, or Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Takuya Onishi. Anne and Takuya are returning to the International Space Station for their second long-duration missions, and Nicole and Kirill are on their first missions to space.
So it's getting pretty real for the 4 crew members that make up Crew-10. Right now, they are just under 25 meters away from the International Space Station, so just outside of that waypoint 2, which is that point at which Dragon will hold for a few minutes.
Big loop. You see we're approaching waypoint 2. Crew visors are closed.
What's going on?
The hell?
Copy. Crew-10 visors are closed.
We did just hear that confirmation that the crew is approaching waypoint 2, so they see that on those screens in front of them. They see the distance, and they're able to monitor that approach as well.
And this is great because you can see Dragon's Draco thrusters firing here. You've got the red and the green navigation lights as well as the white one, but all those little flashes and pulses that you're seeing around the vehicle are the thrusters, keeping that alignment as we continue to approach waypoint 2, 20 meters from the ISS, where again, we are expecting to hold for a few minutes up. And you can see we're really getting close considering now we're really illuminating that forward docking port with Dragon.
And so Dragon is actually at that waypoint 2 mark now, just around 20 meters away. So we will have that hold briefly. And recently, the team in Mission Control Houston did conduct their final go, no go pull as well for docking.
SpaceX on the big loop. Dragon is holding at waypoint 2 for Dragon Eye assessment.
Did they get him yet?
You hear that confirmation.
Dragon, copy.
And you hear that confirmation that Dragon is holding. Now you're on the left-hand side of your screen as you're looking from the ISS's camera out at Dragon. Even though we've said Dragon is holding, you're still going to see some of those thruster pulses because holding in space is not like just stopping your car that holds the same position.
And Dragon SpaceX on the big loop. Ground is bold to go and will be enabling approach shortly. Confirm crew readiness for final approach.
SpaceX Dragon, Crew-10 is ready for final approach.
And that is great words there to hear from SpaceX Mission Control.
Resume has been commanded. Reminder, once Dragon is inside the crew hands-off point, retreat and breakout are not permitted.
Copy.
And Anna, here we go.
So we did just hear that they have the go to resume final approach, so that we had that brief hold completed at waypoint 2, which was just 20 meters away from the International Space Station. So Dragon will now resume its final approach and finish its fly into the International Space Station's Node 2 forward docking port.
And we heard
Dragon is in approach 2.
Your good confirmation of Dragon in that approach 2 mode, meaning it has passed waypoint 2 and is coming into the station. Again, you can see
Station Houston on the big loop. Dragon is on final approach and is go for docking. Monitor per steps 5 and 6 in 1.102 Dragon approach and retreat monitoring.
Station copy.
and that was the call from the International Space Station Flight Control Room to the crew on the ISS. Again, just everyone confirming, making sure everyone's on the same page, as Dragon is now very close to docking with the International Space Station here today.
And so Dragon is now just 17 meters away from the International Space Station and continuing to close in on its target. Coming up here shortly, we will likely hear that call out for CHOP, which stands for Crew Hands Off Point. That typically takes place less than 30 seconds before docking. So as soon as you hear that, you know that that docking will take place very soon after. And then at that point, when we hear the CHOP call out, any aborts will have to be done automatically by Dragon. And so also on the International Space Station, we have NASA astronaut Nick Hague monitoring this final approach. And then once Dragon is docked, NASA astronaut Butch Wilmore will walk through those hatch preparation and opening steps to welcome the crew on board. And Dragon is now less than 14 meters away from the International Space Station and continuing that final approach.
These very delicate series of maneuvers now. Dragon approaching very, very slowly relative to the International Space Station. Again, we talked earlier that launch is all about accelerating the vehicles to orbital velocity, and even though both Dragon and the ISS are traveling at about 17,500 miles per hour or 27,500 kilometers per hour, they are moving very, very slow, like 1/10 of a meter per second in relation to each other right now.
Dragon now at about 10 meters away from the International Space Station. We're standing by for that call out for CHOP here shortly.
SpaceX Dragon, 10 meters.
Copy, 10.
And again, you're looking at the forward docking port of the International Space Station, which is mounted to the Harmony or Node 2 module of the space station. The Crew-9 Dragon, which has been there since September, is also attached to a docking port on this module, and that Dragon is actually just off the top of your screen there as Crew-10's Dragon comes in for docking in just a few moments. And I love these views again. You've got the Dragon, you've got the ISS staring at Dragon on the left-hand side of your screen, and you've got Dragon looking at its docking port on the ISS on the right.
And Dragon is now less than 7 meters away from the International Space Station as it continues to make that final approach. Traveling with a range rate of less than 0.082, which, as you mentioned earlier, it continues to get slower and slower as we make this final approach.
Okay, good. 5 meters.
Copy, 5 meters.
So the next call we should hear is chop, or that crew hands-off period, followed moments later by docking.
That typically comes at about 2 meters away from the International Space Station. Right now, we're less than 4 meters away. Less than 3 meters away.
Ready to 2 meters. Please hands off.
Copy, hands off.
There is the chop call.
Standing by for initial contact of Dragon to the International Space Station.
Dragon contact and soft capture complete.
And there you heard Dragon has successfully docked to the International Space Station. We have contact and soft capture confirmed. Soft capture meaning that the initial soft capture ring around Dragon has physically connected with the International docking adapter. And this is just the first part of the overall docking sequence, Anna.
And so we did have that contact confirmed at 9:04 p.m. Pacific, 11:04 p.m. Central, while both Dragon and the International Space Station were flying 260 statute miles.
Capture ring retraction in progress.
Flying 260 statute miles over the Atlantic Ocean, and we did just hear confirmation that that soft capture ring is now beginning to retract. So they're beginning those steps to firmly attach Dragon to the International Space Station so that we can have what is known as a hard capture.
And again, as we mentioned earlier, like all the timings of these events are a little nebulous and they can change around by a couple of minutes here. So while we were expecting completion of we're expecting the completion of soft capture ring retraction, which we heard was already underway in just a few minutes. That will be followed by the start of the hard capture sequence, which is a series of 12 hooks that are separated into 2 batches of 6 that drive between Dragon and the International Space Station to really hard connect them together. And then after we have that, we have a whole bunch of other things that sort of come into place at that point once Dragon is securely on the Harmony module of the ISS. Once those soft capture systems retract, the spacecraft will we're getting closer for the hard capture. And then and that's about a 15-minute process.
And so once those hooks are fully driven, so those 2 sets of 6 hooks for a total of 12, then we will see those umbilicals deploy. And again, that helps to hardline the data and power from the International Space Station to Dragon. And then the crew on the International Space Station, as well as Dragon, will get ready for the hatch opening operation. So they will have to pressurize the vestibule. Again, that is that space between the Dragon hatch and the Space Station hatch that was previously exposed to the vacuum of space prior to this docking. Again, we had that docking initial capture at 9:04 p.m. Pacific. So they will work to pressurize that space, perform a series of leak checks, and then once everything is good and they get the go-ahead, they will open those hatches. Again, there's the hatch on Dragon that has to be open, as well as the station hatch, to then bring the Crew-10 onto the International Space Station, and there you're actually getting a live view from the International Space Station looking at the station hatch that will have to be opened before you can get to the Dragon hatch and bring the crew on board. And they will be welcomed by the Expedition 72 crew, and they will have a brief welcoming ceremony, and then they will go into a safety briefing and get up to speed and adjust to life on station, again completing that handover period with the Crew-9 crew before Crew-9 returns home.
And then they get to work, because as exciting as the last 28 hours have been from launch until docking, this is just the beginning of a multi-month mission for Crew-10. They're joining the Expedition 72 crew, which has been ongoing for the last few months aboard the International Space Station. And about a month from now, when a Soyuz crew rotation from Russia completes, that will actually mark the start of Expedition 73, which our Crew-10 crew will be joining. And of course, there are about 200 science experiments that the crew will be performing over the course of their multi-month mission up there. And I can't wait to see it and everything that they're going to be able to do up there.
So they will be contributing to about 200 different experiments and technology demonstrations from human research. They're doing some flammability studies.
Ring retraction complete. Docking sequence is holding for MCS reconfiguration.
And we did just hear confirmation that the soft capture ring has been fully retracted. So again, that soft capture that happened with the initial contact about 4 minutes ago at 9:04 p.m. Pacific, 11:04 p.m. Central, as the International Space Station and Dragon were flying over the Atlantic Ocean. They are going to hold that docking's hard capture sequence a little bit to make some final configurations. We do expect that full hard capture process to take about 15 minutes, so we have about 10 or so more minutes to go there. The next step in that process will be to begin to deploy those hooks. Again, there are 12 total hooks that have to fully engage and really bring Dragon in for a nice hard seal to the International Space Station's forward docking port.
And sort of like a lot of things with spaceflight, docking is not just a singular instantaneous event when the two vehicles actually meet and connect with one another. There's the soft capture, which we're through with Dragon right now. There's also, you know, like the vehicles are moving in relation to one another at docking, so they've also got to make sure that any motion between them is dampened out and that they are really ready for that hard capture connection.
And there you're seeing a live view on your screen on the right-hand side. That's a view from the International Space Station of the Dragon spacecraft Endurance, now docked to the International Space Station's Node 2 forward docking port. And again, that docking took place at 9:04 p.m. following an approximately 28-hour journey.
Station Houston, on the big loop, MCS configured, proceeding with hook driving.
Station copies.
And there we hear good confirmation that what we were waiting for there and holding the docking sequence has been, we've gotten through that, and now we are going to begin that hard capture sequence, and that's what you were talking about, Anna, driving the series of 12 hooks, 6 at a time, to form that hard capture. And again, we expect that process to take about 15 minutes, but it really is great to see the Dragon Endurance back on the space station. Its 4th trip to space. This particular capsule has launched the Crew-3, Crew-5, and Crew-7 missions, and of course returned those astronauts safely to Earth. And now it's doing it again for the 4th time for the Crew-10.
And it's the 10th total rotational mission for SpaceX flying crew to the International Space Station. Again, we did hear confirmation that the first set of 6 hooks for a total of 12 is now driving. So those will make a hard capture, and then they will drive the second set of 6 hooks. And then from there, we will have confirmation of that hard capture, and then they will deploy some umbilicals and then begin that pressurization and leak check series before we have hatch opening and welcoming Crew-10 on board the International Space Station. Of course, it's been a pretty long journey for Crew-10. They've been traveling for over 28 hours now, following a liftoff yesterday of 7:03 p.m. Eastern, 4:03 p.m. Pacific from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida, Launch Complex Complex 39A. They had approximately 9-minute ride to orbit before we had that orbital insertion and second engine cutoff, and then they've been traveling in free flight since then. They had a series of burns that set them up for a docking today at 9:04 p.m. Pacific. They first had their phase burn, and that was completed yesterday at 4:52 p.m. Pacific, followed by a boost burn at 12:08 p.m. Pacific, a close burn a little bit after that at 12:50 p.m., and then they had a mid-course out of plane burn.
Actually, must be really bored.
On a track to where they are now at the International
Right
Space
there, he was
Station.
swinging his badge a minute
After that
ago.
sequence of burns, it went pretty good after that point. We saw Dragon cruise through the waypoint 1 and waypoint 0, targets of 400 and 220 meters respectively from the International Space Station, and then close into that waypoint 2 were a brief hold and then right on in for a picture-perfect docking over the North Atlantic.
And so we did have that soft capture at 9:04. Now the first set of 6 hooks has fully closed, and now the second set of 6 hooks is driving. Once that second and final set of hooks finishes closing and driving, we will have that hard capture complete. And then from there, they will, of course, begin the pressurization process of the vestibule.
And of course, part of Crew 10's arrival at the space station means that it's time for another crew who's been up there for a few months to come on home. So a few days after Crew 10, now that Crew 10 has docked, in a few days we will have the planned undocking and return of Crew 9, which includes NASA astronauts Nick Hague, Butch Wilmore, and Sunita Williams, as well as Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov. 2 of them have been up there since September. Nick and Alexander launched on Crew 9 in September on the Crew 9 mission from Slick 40 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. And of course, Butch and Sunny were already on the space station and joined Crew 9 and will now be coming home on Dragon.
So they will do that brief handover period. The handover period between crews is pretty typical. We like to ensure a continuous presence of U.S. crew, and then the Crew 9 will help bring Crew 10 up to speed as the new arrivals and get them adjusted to space station life before they return home. And so that's second set of 6 hooks. We had
the space
that
station
initial docking about 10 minutes ago
9 months,
at
I think.
9:04 p.m. Pacific, and
Longer
typically
than that,
it takes about 15 minutes to have hard capture complete.
At least 9 months, because they're floating in space. How are they going to get back? Take a
And as all
cab.
of that is happening and those umbilicals are being connected,
Hard capture complete.
Stephen, do you happen to know what happened? How come they couldn't
And
follow
there we
their
heard
original
confirmation
mission
that we do
plan to
have
get
hard
back?
capture, so all 12 hooks have finished driving, and then from there the umbilicals will start to deploy, and that.
I'm not entirely sure what the whole backstory is. I know that they have requested rescue mission at some point, and the Biden administration denied them, and then they've been stranded up there ever since. And they had sent a couple. I know they had sent like at least one other mission that didn't pan out, so they couldn't come home. But I mean, the original scenario, I'm not entirely sure. I have to actually look into that. Well, why don't we do that live on the air once they're done getting rescued? I think that'd be a good idea.
Sounds good.
And then 72 members for the next month before they become Expedition 73.
And and you can see that's Sunny Williams there in front of the hatch on the International Space Station side. So we did hear confirmation of hard capture is complete. The docking sequence still proceeding, though, with Dragon. You mentioned those umbilicals that are now being driven between the vehicles to establish good power and data connections between the International Space Station and Dragon. Now, we've talked a little bit about what the folks on the ISS side are doing here, getting those hatches ready. And inside Dragon, they're continuing to monitor the docking sequence as it progresses, and then they'll also be able to get out of their suits as well that they have been in for the last couple of hours as Dragon has approached the International Space Station.
So as Dragon crew gets out of their suits, of course, as we mentioned previously, NASA's astronaut Butch Wilmore is going to start those hatch opening operations. And there on your screen, you are seeing NASA astronaut Nick Hague, as well as Roscosmos cosmonaut Ovchinin, as they stand by to greet Crew 10 members and welcome them as part of the International Space Station crew. Again, they are going to get that pressurization process underway here shortly, and they will pressurize that area known as the vestibule, which is the area between the Dragon hatch and the station hatch that was previously exposed to the vacuum of space. And then once that happens, they will conduct a series of leak checks. And there on your screen, you just saw NASA astronaut Sunny Williams actually floating right in front of that hatch that will be open in just a little bit.
Dragon, SpaceX on the big loop. Docking sequence complete. Ground will be enabling hardline power and comm connections shortly. You are go to doff suits per procedure 4.012. Crew-10, welcome aboard the International Space Station.
SpaceX Houston and ISS, this is Dragon Mission Specialist Takuya Onishi on the big loop. We copy the docking sequence is complete. We are go for 4.012 for docking suits. And on behalf of the entire crew, I would like to thank all the partners, especially our SpaceX friends who trained us and enabled us to safely arrive at the International Space Station. It was so amazing to see the ISS shining in the darkness of space and symbolizing human beings, technology, and international cooperation. And it's such a great honor for us to be part of this program. We have a lot of exciting work ahead of us that we are looking forward to. Again, thank you very much to everybody who helps us.
It looks like we gotta wait before they open the hatch.
Yeah. Yeah, it
There you
does.
just heard some
Well, I guess
really nice words between.
There's quite a few things to check and straighten out. Data has to be flowing.
Again, that
everything has to be pressurized the same.
Right. I didn't realize it was that long of a process, though. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we do some of our deep diving into how this whole thing happened in the first place, and then we'll jump back into that, since it looks like we're going to have a little bit of a wait.
Okay. Yeah, because this is a curious, now that we're watching this, I have these questions that I'm curious about. As our listeners and watchers probably are wondering too, what happened anyway? Some of them know. They'd be like, "You idiots should know this," but the reality is, life happens. So here we are, and it's curious. I mean, I remember when they did the moon landing, and I had questions then that were never answered. About that, because when I saw him walking on the moon, one of the guys fell down, but he didn't fall all the way down. He fell about halfway down and stopped and floated back up. I was like, no, there's something wrong with this picture. So it's very strange and mysterious to me that all those we've got a government agency that's in charge of making space missions and cataloging them and keeping track of them, that has all this video of the historic moment when humankind first walks on the moon, and they lost all that shit.
Oh no. It's freaking amazing how much the government can accidentally lose in the show. I mean, come on. If you're a counterintelligence agency, that's the best freaking cover story ever to use. Because then there's no way for them to dispute it, right?
Right.
Go look for the records. Well, no, you can't do that.
We've lost it. Oops. So where's the data?
It disappeared. We don't know what happened. 1 minute it was there, and then it was gone.
Vanished mysteriously.
It just vanished into thin air.
We're not going to be able to verify or confirm anything because the data just disappeared, man.
It's just
Yeah.
a magic trick.
You know, we have discovered in the process of developing NASA that there are interdimensional beings that are capable of popping in and out of space-time. So we believe that perhaps these interdimensionals have stolen all our data.
Right, right. You know, it sounds kind of like the explanations that you've been hearing out of the whole Lou Elizondo freaking quote unquote whistleblower movement, which everybody should know this. He's a counterintelligence agent, folks. He still works for the government. I don't know if we should be getting our disclosure information from people that are actively involved in counterintelligence operations.
Well, listen, man, I think if we're going to get good disinformation, we need to get it from a disinformation agent who works with the government secretly. Otherwise, the disinformation is not going to be dis enough, and it'll be information, and they don't want to give us information. It has to be the right amount of dis in it so that we think we know something and we don't.
And then we can just tell the public, oh, it's this, and this, but we really don't know what the fuck we're talking about.
Yeah, because that's our role. We are citizen journalists. We're the ones that they want to really make sure that they give us a story that seems credible enough till we'll propagate it and promulgate it all over the internet.
Right.
Then they can say, you see, these guys are conspiracy theorists. They don't really know anything because none of this makes any sense. Where did they get this nonsense? And of course, we got it from them.
Right. Problem, reaction, solution. CIA Handbook 101 right there.
Yeah, buddy.
Go to.
That's the way it's done.
It is. Let's get into this article. I love that we can just clown on freaking the mainstream so-called whistleblower movement and media and their inability to freaking rescue astronauts all at the same time.
Right. Or to hold on. But of course, if we're talking about the same people that were responsible for like keeping track of the moonwalk data, the original tapes, the original everything.
Them too, yeah.
It makes perfect sense that they're having trouble picking these guys up off the space station.
Right. I mean, talk about having an incompetence problem.
Yeah. Oh, man.
So we like to have fun every now and then here, folks. This is like a spontaneous live. I just happened to catch that they were about to dock in like 30 minutes, and I was like, why don't we do a live on it? So
yeah,
I did. So we're going to go through and read this article. This is by Sky News. Well, maybe we should watch the video first and then we'll play the audio. We'll read the article.
Ignition and liftoff. Go SpaceX, go NASA Crew-10. Copy, 1 Alpha.
And liftoff of Crew-10.
Vehicle pitching down, right?
They're breathing a huge sigh of relief at Cape Canaveral, Crew-10 having finally lifted off from Launch Pad 39. On a mission that bears more significance than most, the arrival of these 4 astronauts at the International Space Station will allow 2 others, Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams, who've been stranded there, to leave at last.
Main engine cut off.
SpaceX Dragon, welcome.
Station operation confirmed.
The Dragon capsule transporting the 4 astronauts separated from the rocket right on cue, the Falcon 9 spacecraft returning to Earth for a smooth landing.
Let's watch as Falcon 9 touches down on landing zone 1.
We caught a magical moment as the crew on board tested zero gravity for the first time.
Thank you.
President Trump claimed President Biden had abandoned these 2 astronauts. NASA hit back, pointing to technical difficulties.
We love you and we're coming up to get you, and you shouldn't have been up there so long.
Whatever the politics, it looks like they're finally about to come home, 9 months after they arrived on an 8-day mission.
8-day mission.
Well, yeah, it was only supposed to be, it's only 8 days. I thought it was 10. Dude, that guy had a pretty thick Scottish accent there, don't you say?
Aye, laddie, he certainly did.
They're feeling a great sigh of relief now that they've gotten the capsule up to the space station. No, I love it though. I mean, I got a lot of Scottish and Irish in me, so I mean, that's kind of close to my heart. So,
Scottish and Irish is what Mike was.
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I think I've
I
got a
just
fair
wasn't
amount
expecting
myself.
Irish accent from Australian news source, or a Scottish accent from Australian news source. Like, look a little bit on the Scottish side as opposed to the Australian side. It seemed to me. All right. A long-awaited rocket with the replacement crew for two stranded NASA astronauts has finally launched to the International Space Station. U.S. astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams have been stuck on the ISS for 9 months, having had their journey home repeatedly pushed back. Repeatedly, that's the key word there, folks. The Crew-10 mission was initially scheduled to launch the replacement crew of four astronauts, I'm getting all tongue twisted today, from Florida on Wednesday, but a last-minute issue with the rocket's ground systems forced a delay. NASA said on Thursday that SpaceX, headed and founded by tech billionaire Elon Musk, had resolved the issue, flushing a suspected pocket of air out of a hydraulic clamp arm, and that the weather was 95% favorable for a Friday launch. A view of the Earth from the second stage rocket left and booster right up here on the left and right, folks. It's pretty cool. Successful touchdown. First stage of the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket to return to Earth. Pick NASA. The crew is now expected to arrive at the ISS on Saturday night. They are NASA's Anne McClain and Nicole Ayers, who are both military pilots, along with Japan's Takuya Onishi and Russia's Kirill Peskov, both former airline pilots. They will spend the next 6 months at the space station, releasing Mr. Wilmore and Miss Williams, who have been on the ISS since June 2024. The pair originally planned to go to space for just 8 days, but got stuck on the station after their Boeing Starliner spacecraft started experiencing problems. And this is the crew of the astronauts that went up there to rescue them and replace them, send them home from just a couple days ago, or yesterday, I believe. The mission has become entangled in politics as Donald Trump and his advisor Elon Musk claimed, without evidence, that former President Joe Biden left the astronauts on the space station for political reasons. I could see that happening, considering, like, how could you not rescue our own astronauts just because you're in the middle of a freaking political campaign? Like, that's just to me, that's freaking unfathomable. Like, it shouldn't matter that you're in the middle of a political campaign or anything. Like, there's no reason that they shouldn't have freaking made that a priority in my book. This is my 2 cents. NASA said the two astronauts have had to remain on the ISS to maintain its minimum staffing level. Oh, is that their reasoning? That's ridiculous, but I don't know. Well, I suppose we'll find out in the days to come. NASA brought forward the Crew-10 mission from 26th of March, swapping a delayed SpaceX capsule. Wait. Oh, it's supposed to be initially set for the 26th of March, so they brought it forward ahead so they could do this. Okay, cool. Swapping a delayed SpaceX capsule for one that would be ready sooner. Mr. Trump and Mr. Musk's demand for an earlier return was an unusual intervention and put additional pressure on NASA's preparation and safety process. They've had the training. I imagine that they're well prepared for these kind of scenarios. I would have to imagine. I mean, if they go through the rigorous training that I'm told that they do, what do you say? What say you on that?
I think that they have to be prepared for every eventuality. They've got to think what if as much as they possibly can, because it's not like you're on Earth where you can call up and, say, hey, honey, run to the hardware store. I need a screwdriver. You've got to make sure that you have all the tools, that you have all the materials, because you're not 100 miles from the hardware store. You're, I don't know, how far up is space? You're, at any given moment, you're what, 8 miles up or something? I don't know. And so it makes it very complicated. It's like, going onto a vacation onto a deserted island. You better plan ahead in great detail because
Right.
you don't know what you're going to run into. So certainly it must be part of their training to prepare for every imaginable eventuality, but that doesn't mean that they're prepared for every eventuality, only the ones
Right.
they imagined could happen. So,
Right.
I
And
don't know.
that's so true. You only can prepare for what scenario you plan for, right?
Right.
The ones you can't really prepare for because you didn't think of them.
Yeah. I think if you saw the movie, I think it was Apollo 13, when so many things went wrong, and they just weren't sure if they were going to be able to get these guys back from the, on Apollo 13, and on Earth, they're like, okay, look, this is all you have. Go in this room and use these things and figure this out, because there isn't anything else. They're on a spacecraft. They're not going to be able to, you can't add to or you can subtract from, but you got to just take what we have in this room because it duplicates what they have available and make it work. And so, it's a problem. It's an incredible problem. It's the kind of problem that we hope we never have to face. But if we ever do, it's like that's when human ingenuity and creativity is at its paramount, is most important, because you got lives on the line. You got it's you have to be able to figure it out. And I think it's phenomenal what they do. I think the technology that human beings have mastered is astounding, is absolutely marvelous.
It really did. And to your point about Apollo 13, I would even say that that's probably why they say work the problem. So because you have to work the problem as it comes at you, and if you only have a certain amount of things to work with, if you don't make it work with those things, you're pretty much fucked. Especially in space.
Yeah, if you're
my language, but
yeah, if you're floating in space and the options are figure out the problem or continue floating in space until you die or crash, you're going to want to figure out the problem. And and you've got to, and the problems are numerous. You've got to have your own oxygen supply, and it's got to be balanced with the amount of carbon dioxide that you're producing. You've got to control the water. You can't have a water buildup or too little water at any given moment. It's the food supply has to be sufficient for however long you're up there. And, it's like, oh, there's so many things that so much can go wrong. And it's so easy to have things messed up that it's incredible. It's really astounding that we have this kind of technology that we can do so many things with,
and AI is only making it go even accelerating exponentially. I think. I mean, it's a huge advantageous tool, but we also, we don't know how far the AI can go, or even if there's limitations, or even if it will even adhere to any limitations we impose on it. So I also have AI is a wonderful tool, but I also think we have to keep a keen eye on it and definitely keep some humans in the loop and have regulation on it, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I think AI is another incredible leap into an unknown technology that it's dizzying and dazzling what it can do. You can, but it also has its own particular limitations that we don't know. We don't know half of what it can do, and we don't know 10% of what it can do, and we don't know 90% of what can go wrong.
Right.
That's, just realistically, because that our vision is what we are able to see from here. But what we have is a technology that is so far beyond what we've ever seen before that to even understand it is something that is daunting and, a phenomenal task. It's not going to, so again, it's kind of like launching into space. You have to take every what if you can possibly think of and say, okay, what if this? What if that? What if that? And, hey, the first several times self-driving cars have killed people. and oops, darn, sorry about that. That's
Right.
that's part of the learning curve, we hope. And
One of my go ahead, finish your thought, and then I'll chime
well, I
in
was
on
just
what
going to say that's part of the learning curve, we hope. And then there's always this this possibility of you've got technology. Well, technology relies on human minds to arrange it, set it up, and launch it in the direction it's going to go, even if it has the capacity to then run programs out to do all kinds of things that are very complicated things. So there's always this possibility of, okay, what if some wicked person hacks into the infrastructure of the wiring, or not the wiring, but the software of self-driving cars, and you wind up with a maximum overdrive situation. I don't know if you're familiar with that movie or not.
Yeah.
My father was actually in that movie. He's the first face
really?
to see.
Oh,
But
wow.
but the Earth passes through the tail of a comet, and all of the machines start thinking for themselves and coming after humankind and killing them. And,
Was that the one based on that Stephen King novel?
yeah, it's the first
Okay,
movie
that's what I
Stephen
thought.
King made that he directed.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, yeah, no, I heard. I think I've seen it a long time ago, but I
Yeah,
do remember.
it's a cult classic, and it's little known. And I'm not saying, gosh, you need to run out and watch it, because I didn't think a lot of the movie, but my father was in it, and his name appears right next to Marla Maples in the credits. I don't know if
There
you
you go.
know that name, but she
That's
was
that name
married
I
to
do.
Donald Trump for a little while there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So let
That
me
part I
just say
didn't
right
know.
here and now, there is no truth to the rumor that my father was with Marla Maples before Donald Trump, except in that movie. There's no truth to that rumor.
Nice comic. I love how you interjected that comic relief there.
Oh,
My worst fear is that like freaking we're gonna give over freaking the autonomous control of the nuclear launch codes to some AI, and it's gonna decide that we're a threat. And the next thing we know, we have a Terminator scenario. That's what I don't want to happen.
yeah. Well, therein lies the rub. I mean, that's if you give a machine enough autonomy to sort of think, and which we've done at this point, where we've got AI that you can have discussions with that are deep philosophical discussions, and bring in science, bring in philosophy, and look at things from different points of view, and it's astounding. And so when you've got that much complexity going on, if it then it multiplies the possibility that intelligence, that is a synthetic intelligence that's just running programs, but it's able to run millions of them at once, looks at the whole situation and says, wow, these people are the problem. We need to, fix this. And if AI has the power, and it decides that's what needs to be done, then Apollo 13, Houston, we have a real problem here. We're looking at a global thermonuclear war that is designed to kill all of the people. And of course, I don't think that's likely, but the things that are likely, we're already seeing happening. Um, and those are the things like, oh gosh, our government's colluding with industry, and big pharma is colluding with the media to make us buy stuff, and the stuff that it's making us buy is stuff that's killing us. The stuff that's bad for us is stuff that doesn't help us and actually hurts us. And so.
Well, all you need to do to know that that's true is go back to 2020 and look at all the freaking that mainstream media news coverage during that time, and listen to who sponsors it at the end. Sponsored by Pfizer.
Yeah. Yeah. It's no wonder that everyone was saying, it's no wonder why late night talk show hosts were dancing and singing, get your jab, get your jab. It's no wonder, Because who are they sponsored by? Same ones that are sponsoring the news that's saying everyone must take this because it's the best thing. It's going to protect you. It's reliable. It's dependable. That's what you need to do. Well, thank you. I'll take my check now. Wow, I made that much? Woo! Let's go buy a boat.
It seems to come down to money, doesn't it?
It really does. I wonder if those guys on the space station are coming out yet. Let's take a look. You want to?
Take a look and see. Let me share my screen.
The team has ahead of them. This is
Hatch opens in 58 minutes.
Time.
Wow.
We will remain on air and continue our.
I'm not sure if we're going to hang out that long, but wow.
We're not. I did want to catch the docking, though. I didn't realize it was going to take that long for the rest of the process to unfold, but
yeah.
Reminder when we do.
I'm sure they have a checklist they're following.
Oh, why is this shit freezing up on me?
Farewell.
Come on. Go full screen. There we go. It's like got an extreme lag on this thing. I can't, every time I click it, it takes a minute for it to register. I'm not sure what's going on there, but I got it.
Shortened period.
What? Oh, they're having connection issues. Oh, here we go.
Need to undergo to prepare for departure.
Oh, they have to. The astronauts up there have to get ready to get going, huh?
Yeah.
I wonder if the time delay is it's different as a result of the astronauts having to get ready, or just the process of the hatch procedure.
Well, you know, they've got to shower and put on deodorant and stuff.
Gonna make us wait.
We copy. We are still assessing.
I'm kidding, folks. Obviously, they've been up there for 9 months and had to wait longer than anybody.
Yeah.
Tess Caswell is the Capcom here in the room today.
It is something to ponder what an astronaut goes through.
Yeah.
You know, obviously there's not a shower in space because that would just be bounce and there goes the water everywhere. You could squirt it on you, but it would just bounce off. It wouldn't run down. You'd have to actually shower every part of your body. And then the water's just going to fill the room. You'll just have water droplets floating all around you. So I'm sure that they use some kind of wet wipes.
They have to. They have to, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh, you little pass. I've got a dog in here that's just really upset because her ball went under the desk and behind some stuff. So she can't get it. Now she's like,
I can hear her ruffling around on the ground. And I was like, is that your dog?
Yes, it is. Come here. Come here, you.
Necessary for the critical phase that is contact and capture.
Yes,
good. Dragon to the International Space Station.
Good.
Once they go through that dynamic phase.
He's big.
Taking off their suits and putting on something a little bit more comfortable.
Say hi. Say hello, everybody.
Suits when they enter the hatch and are
oh, that's it. That's a good girl. Yeah.
It's Robin's dog.
I know. No, I don't let you down. You're just going to go after the same thing. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I bet she was excited when you finally came home from your trip, huh?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my goodness, yes.
Went crazy.
Yeah, when we came home from the beach, she was so happy to see us. And this really is a dog that loves me, too. Boy, she's... Yeah. Say hi, Mia. Say hello to everybody. I know.
He's like,
give me that ball. Put me down. Let me get that ball. I want my ball.
It's behind a bunch of shit, huh?
Yeah.
That she can get to.
Under a desk, behind a bunch of stuff. It's crazy.
I wonder how that killed your back.
Huh?
I wonder how that fares for your back.
Well, it's crawling around on the ground is not fun on my knees.
deeper into
So getting down to
Yeah, I
get
can
that
imagine
call
not.
sign. Yeah.
All right.
That white is the
Well, we'll watch for a little bit longer and then we'll probably wrap up the live, folks.
Approximately 10 more minutes before we're ready.
10 more minutes
10 minutes.
before we're ready.
Copy, 10 minutes.
Hey, look, there's something open.
Prior to Dragon's arrival at the International
Wonder if that's the Dragon hatch right there.
Space Station.
It looks like it's on the inside of the International Space Station. I think their hatch is already, their inner hatch is open.
Yeah, that's what it's looking like to me, too.
Being exposed to intense sunlight and
That's why I'm saying I wonder if that round thing there is what they travel through to get inside.
in sun and
Well,
shade,
her ball's under there, and all she's doing is squawking and yelling and scratching, so
because of
that's
this
my best I can do.
Some significant thermal constraints and thermal conditions in that vestibule. Now, when Dragon docks, that vestibule is at vacuum, and the task here is to bring.
So where does the International Space Station start and the Dragon rocket begins?
My guess is,
I think that's for the ISS, right? The like the tubing looking part, I would imagine.
no, I think that's from the International Space Station. I'm guessing that that's the Dragon right there that we're looking at.
Yeah. Yeah, but the part on the right with all the tubes look.
I think that's where they're docked.
Yeah, I think so too.
There would be too much fluctuation to accurately read if there is indeed a leak.
You would imagine a hatch has to have enough space on the inside to close the outer hatch and then the inner hatch, and then do the same on the other station or the other thing you're docking with, for them to have a proper seal. So I would imagine it would probably be like that, like long and maybe a little bit.
Yeah, and you know, I couldn't quite hear what he was saying, but it was something about you've got to have the ability to know if there is a leak and to what degree there is a leak. You know, because your air is something that you sort of have to conserve on a space station. It's not like you can just get more air if you run out.
I'm just going to annotate for a little bit.
Okay.
So people know what's what.
International Space Station.
Dragon. A little bit of flames. Oh, they switched cameras on me. Damn it.
For some of the upcoming procedures.
Now I got to remove it.
Today, we're just listening.
Healy. There we go. I've never made use of the annotation feature like properly, so I figured I'd use it today.
Procedure 4.012, step 5, alpha 6, suits are drying.
Copy, we're with you for suit drying. Dragon, at this time, you have a go for sections 1 through 3 of 4.400.
Sections 1 through 3 of 4.400.
4.40.
Sections 1 through 3 of 4.400 check.
Views from here in Mission Control Houston. The calls you heard were of Commander Ann McLean inside Dragon Endurance, speaking with the core, the equivalent Capcom role over at Mission Control, the SpaceX's Mission Control over in Hawthorne, California. You heard that they completed their suit doffing and are now drying their suits, setting them aside, going through the next steps of procedures. Meanwhile, inside the International Space Station, the crew is preparing, the Expedition 72 crew is preparing for Crew-10's arrival.
Look, she's dancing. She's excited to be going.
Happy. She looks really happy. She's going home, man.
See, she's dancing. She's like, oh, I'm going home. I'm going home.
Yeah.
Yvonne Wagner and Alexander.
Yeah, they're ready to pop the champagne, but if you do that at the space
turned
station,
into 9 months.
Higher Expedition
golly,
72. That
that's
greets
kind of like,
Crew-10 as they enter
the modern day version of Gilligan's Island.
Yeah, pretty much.
The weather started getting rough. The tiny ship was tossed. If not for the courage of the fearless crew, the minnow would be lost.
We should come up with a variation on that for this.
Yeah. Yeah, we need to find out the details of what happened exactly.
Right.
And then and write us a little ditty for it.
Look, he's ready to go. He's already in that hatch. He's like, get me out of here. I don't even think he's going home. I think he's probably prepping everything.
Yeah. Looks like he's clearing some stuff out of there.
From what I understand, it's just the two that were stranded, right? That girl and then the other guy.
Yeah, the other two are staying. There's only 2 that are going home.
But how many were stranded though in total? Was it 2 or was it more than that?
No, I think it was just 2.
Oh, it was him. He was one of the guys.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah,
him and her,
right.
I think.
Or maybe it was that guy. I'm not sure.
Oh, I'm not sure. I know it was her.
Yeah. She's taking pictures.
Yeah. Yeah. Her hair's kind of hilarious, you know?
It is. It reminds me of that kid's book, Magic School Bus, and the teacher on that bus and her hair.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I could see that. I'm familiar with that book.
What was it, Mrs. Frazzle or something like that?
Oh, it was something like that. Frazzle, dazzle, something.
Yeah.
I think maybe you got it. I think it was Frazzle.
As we listen to the sounds of silence.
Yeah, no, man. Yeah, that must be their luggage they're pulling out.
Probably.
For their 8-day trip.
Well, they did do a lot of science experiments, allegedly, while they were stranded, so.
Yeah. I'm glad they managed to keep themselves busy.
Right.
Golly.
I'm surprised they have such an optimistic attitude about it. I would have been pissed.
Well, not at this moment, though. You know, if
No, I would have been pissed when I found out I was going to be stranded up there and there was no rescue in sight. I would have been like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, that would have that might have upset me a bit for a while. But you know, then what are you going to do? You're going to piss and moan for the next 8 months? I mean,
right.
You just get busy doing what there is to do because there's nothing else to do. You're up floating around in space in a capsule, you know, so there's not a whole lot of time. That's all there is time. And
right.
You're just going to be there with your thoughts and whatever there is to do.
Kind of like being locked up in prison almost.
It kind of is. Yeah. Yeah. They're in a very limited space. The diet is probably very mundane, lots of similarities every day. And you can't go out for a walk. You can't go out, for a smoke. You can't.
I don't know how I'd do there. I'd go crazy if not have a cigarette break.
No cigarette breaks for 8 months? Oh, man, oh man.
I'd be a non-smoker by the time I got back.
I know. That would definitely be enough to break the habit. Golly.
Although the first few weeks would probably be pure hell.
Look at that. Of course, you're weightless, so you can do stuff like that. That would be a trip, man. and and you've got to do something to,
Dragon
you know.
to Houston on the big loop. Stand by for hardline audio config.
Go ahead.
You've got to do something to keep your physical fitness.
Copy, standing by.
It's got to be really challenging because under zero gravity, you're going to be losing muscle mass unless you're working those muscles. And and virtually every exercise relies on gravity. I mean, whether you're lifting weights, you're lifting them against gravity. Whether you're swimming, the water is held onto the ground by gravity, and you're able to push against it there because of the density created. You're, if you're walking or running, walking is a controlled fall. Gravity is part of that. Running is controlled falling, and you're working with gravity. So
I never thought about it like that.
Yeah. So in zero gravity, there's nothing to push against for your muscles, your cells, your body. And and that's why one of the dangers of going to space is that you're going to lose a lot of muscle mass and be much weaker when you return. And that's practically inevitable. So you've got to mediate that as best you can by some kind of isometrics, which is, figuring out a way to push against your own muscles and push against your environment to keep building muscle mass the whole time. And
oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, probably have to definitely increase your physical activity, at least I would imagine double what you would on the Earth, just to keep your muscles from atrophying.
At least. And of course, the nice thing is you'd have practically unlimited energy because the amount of energy that you would burn on Earth to do tasks would be cut by 60, 70, 80%, because
oh, wow.
there's no resistance from gravity. There's nothing holding you to the, you give the slightest little push and there you go floating across the room.
Imagine how scary it must be for an astronaut that gets knocked off, that's out there like with the tether, right? And just imagine get knocked loose from that and they get a little bit too much momentum. They're not going to be able to stop without the proper training or on how to work in that environment. And man, there was this astronaut simulator that I had on my when Google Daydream had their VR thing going before they abandoned it, and they had a feature in it where you could take I think it was gimbal lock off, or what it was a feature where it was more realistic, like you were actually an astronaut. So slightest movement forward would keep you going, and the momentum would continue and continue. And dude, it was so hard to control. Like it was scary because it's VR, right? So you feel like you're actually in space.
Yeah.
But like I can only imagine how difficult that must be to have to navigate through.
Yeah, because there's, I mean, your vestibular sense is the sense of your body in space, but on Earth we rely on gravity, and and it helps with vestibular sense. It helps us to know where we are in relation to our environment.
On the big loop for Butch, you are go in step 3.1.
And
Decimal 1.
And of course,
I'm gonna mute the audio.
Dragon Houston on the big
Hold on
loop.
1 second.
Com check. Hardline audio config complete.
Why is my mouse not wanting to cooperate? There we go. Go ahead.
Well, I was just, it's got to mess with so many of your senses, particularly things like the vestibular sense, which is the body in relation to its environment and to space. I mean, it's like you're falling all the time.
I can only imagine that must be just that, and your heart's going up to your throat, like on a roller coaster, on the downward incline from a roller coaster, but constantly. Imagine it like that, folks.
Yeah, because you are weightless, so that familiar sense of my body, as I lift my arms, there's resistance. I'm pushing against gravity. But if there was no gravity, then the same amount of effort to do this would do this, and that's you have to adapt to that, which I'm sure takes quite some time. One of the things that they do to train astronauts is trampolining. And one of the reasons that they do that is because trampolining aligns gravity with acceleration and deceleration, because acceleration, deceleration, and gravity all have the same effect on the body, which is why trampolining is one of the very best exercises in the world, maybe the best exercise in the world for overall body fitness, because it exercises every single cell. Because as you come down upon the mat of the trampoline and it bows, that is deceleration. But what happens is it concentrates gravity. And now at this point, gravity is much more as it begins to push you back up. It's like being in a high G environment, high gravity environment. Then you're up here in a weightless environment until you start coming down. And as you hit this, you decelerate. Gravity's increasing because your weight is more as you're being slowed down. And then it's even more at the bottom. And then it's pushing you back up. So you're going in and out of a high G, high gravity environment. And that means what happens is all the cells of the body feel that. There's not a single cell in your body that's not being affected by feeling like gravity just increased and then decreased and then increased and then decreased. And then, so as it goes through this process, each cell in the body is biologically programmed in a way that it's going to go, oh man, I'm under stress. I have to adapt, and adaptive stress takes over. And so that cell develops thicker cell walls and more mitochondria. The mitochondria are the things that produce the energy in the body, the ATP, adenotriphosphate, and the thicker cell walls make it more durable, make it stronger.
I'm impressed by your knowledge of physics and biology and cells and all that. I had no idea you were so versed.
Well, I got into it some time back, and there was a guy named Al Carter that actually worked with NASA, and he developed a good solid little rebounder. A rebounder is a small trampoline, the ones that people have in their homes. And and he was like, I can't remember if he worked with the circus or he was just, he got into trampolining, and then he trained his kids up trampolining, and they would travel around giving demonstrations, and they'd go somewhere where there was a trampoline and they could do all the tricks, double flips and, bouncing, all kinds of stuff, just entertaining people with it. Well, one day his daughter came home from school, and she said, and she's like second grade. She's like, Dad, I think I did something bad today. And he said, what? She's like, I don't know if I should tell you. He's like, what? He's like, well, I beat this boy in arm wrestling. And he's like, oh, well, that's not bad. He's like, and then I beat all the other boys in my grade in arm wrestling. He's like, oh, really? Yeah. And then I beat all the boys that were older than me in arm wrestling. He's like, you did you? He's like, yeah. And so he started pondering, why is my kid that strong? What in the world? And so he began to go down the rabbit hole that I just kind of took us down a little bit to understand what it is about trampolining that causes people to get stronger. And so it causes the body to develop more and more strength. Every single muscle is going to get stronger because every single cell is going to get stronger when you're trampolining. And you can bounce very lightly.
I imagine it can only go upward from there. So yeah, that would be the natural progression, cells to muscles.
Yeah.
And I had no idea.
We're talking about your heart muscle. We're talking about the cells in your thyroid gland and your thymus gland, and in your all the glands, all the muscles, all the organs, all the nerves. Every cell is every cell, and they're all getting stronger. The other thing that trampolining does is the lymph fluid in the body. You know that you have a heart and that circulates your blood, and all of this is stuff that they have to be aware of in space as astronauts, because it's all affected. In a zero gravity environment, the same amount of heart pressure, pumping blood pressure, is going to be more pressure because there's no pressure on the body. So, your body's sort of going to expand to it. And fortunately, the vessels also will expand, but you want good flexibility and durability in your vessels. But in any case, that wasn't what I was going to talk about, because I'm going to talk about the other system in the body of fluid is lymph fluid. And lymph fluid is kind of the sewage system of the body. It's the clear fluid that seeps out if you scrape yourself and you get blood and this clear fluid. That's lymph fluid, and it's throughout the whole body, but it doesn't have
blisters.
What?
Is that in your blisters? That's clear.
That's what fills up blisters. And,
okay, gotcha.
And
I
throughout
just had a big old nasty one. I don't know if you can see. It's actually healed up pretty well, but right there where that little light red spot is, I got burned on the stove. Or not the stove, the oven, because I was making crescent. But I went to open the stove, and like there's a screw that keeps the inner frame and the outer frame connected, and the outer frame's got the spring that keeps it down, but the inner frame doesn't. So the inner part came back up on me and got me real good, and it freaking turned into a blister the next day.
Yeah.
I was
when I used to work in fast food, every once in a while, I would be the fry man,
over me.
and I'd wind up with a checkerboard pattern burn from the fry basket. That happened more than once. But in any case, lymph fluid doesn't have a pump. Your heart is the pump for your blood, and it pumps blood throughout the entire circulatory system. The lymph fluid isn't pumped that way. The lymph fluid is pumped by one-way valves all the way through your body. And when there's pressure upward on them, they open. When there's pressure downward on them, they close. So as you walk, as you move, it creates varying amounts of upward and downward pressure, opening and closing the lymph ducts. And these ducts are throughout the body. The entire body has lymph fluid and lymph ducts. So when you're on a trampoline, you're going close, open, close, open with every jump of every lymph duct in the body. And so you're getting good lymph circulation, which means that the sewage system in the body is getting all of the cells' waste products cleaned up and cleared out and moved to the waste disposal units in the body. So so there's that. I mean, while we're talking about this, and the thing that made me think of it is that's how astronauts train to develop a body that can withstand being in space. Well, if by training in alternating high G and low G environments, your body becomes more adaptable and much more strong. And so they incorporated, once they saw the research that Al Carter was doing, then they hooked up their astronauts to all their machines and started analyzing the data for themselves. And that's where a lot of the data came from that I'm now explaining to you, because he worked with NASA to get these astronauts in superb physical condition, which is what's necessary to be an astronaut. You've got to be top notch. But anyone who wants to get into top-notch physical shape, get yourself a rebounder and start jumping on it every day, and your body's going to get stronger. Your brain is going to get stronger. Your circulatory system is going to have more flexibility, because every single capillary, every single vein, every single artery is also expanding and contracting each time as the pressure gets greater and lesser from the alignment of gravity with acceleration and deceleration, which makes it a high G environment, a low G environment, high G environment, low G environment. And so all of these things happen when you start doing that.
Well, that was a very, very detailed and very thorough explanation. I think that was very educational. Definitely. We got about 30 minutes before they open the hatch. Shall we just stick around till it's open?
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay here. This is kind of really interesting to me.
Yeah, I know. Me too. I've always been fascinated by this kind of thing, space and new frontiers and shit. So, I mean, truth be told, if I had the technology to get the fuck off this rock, I'd leave and never come back.
Well, this is where you might be. You might be looking at your new home for an indefinite period of time, because, you're going to go where? Like when you say had the technology to get off this rock, I mean, I think you're thinking in terms of collapsing time space. You'd have to, if you're planning on traveling to another
I'm trying to
habitable
get on
planet.
and staying there. That's what I'm planning.
Yeah. So in that case, what you're talking about is you've got to collapse time space. Oh, look, there's an alien on the spacecraft.
That was funny as shit. Oh man, I did not expect that one. That caught me off guard.
There's an interdimensional being there. Just as I was speaking about them, they appear.
I can just imagine some gullible person seeing this and be like, "Oh, there's aliens."
What do you mean, gullible person?
No, I mean, don't get me wrong. I believe there's aliens, but obviously, I think had eye slits, right? For the human.
Yeah. Yeah.
Saying, you know how some people are when it comes to that, believe anything that they hear or read or see on the mainstream.
Well, I don't think people. I think some people.
I think some people now
believe anything. Some people believe nothing, and
right.
and but I think the vast majority of people are able to consider a pretty good number of possibilities. But I might be mistaken. I mean, because as I talk to people, I do run into a lot whose minds seem pretty closed, and that's pretty normal. It's pretty normal because we're socially conditioned to close our minds to things that don't fit into our worldview. Socially conditioned from the time we're very young. That's what's normal.
A lot of ways that can limit our growth, I think.
What?
I think in a lot of ways that can limit our growth.
Oh, of course it does. I mean, if you're in a society that says, fairies are very real. Fairies, my lad, they're very real. You'll find them when you go out to the woods or you come out to the cemetery. Right. There's ghosts in the cemetery that you could go and talk to if you know how to talk to them. Well, if you're from that culture,
the wee little lads.
Yeah, that's right. I had a wee little lad that came up to me one time and he escorted me to where there were a great many of them having a beautiful little festival. It was the most amazing thing.
Oh, I love it with all these little tangents, man. Just to fucking fuck off with the fucking just do whatever, man.
My point is that there are people who live in a world where these things are perfectly real. And they're going, and you're looking at one of them. One day, my daughter came up to me. I was sitting at my desk and working on my computer, and she's like this. She's got these great big glasses, and her eyes are gigantic through her glasses. And she's got her thumb in her other hand like this, and she's looking at the tip of her thumb, and looking at me, and looking at the tip of her thumb, and looking at me. And for a long time, a couple minutes, 3 or 4 minutes, she's a little kid, 3, 4 years old. And finally I look over and I'm like, what, honey? She's like, that's okay, never mind. I'm like, no, tell me, what? And I turn away from my computer and I look at her and she looks up at me and she gives me this really hard look, like really hard, like, I'm like, okay. She's like, Dad, do you believe in fairies? I'm like, well, I don't think that all those people that have talked about them for all these centuries in virtually every culture on the planet are making things up and just making up lies. I don't think that. So even though there might be a lot of people that would say, oh, that's not possible. Oh, they can't be real. Oh, there's no such thing. I'm not one of those people. So I'd have to say, yes, I believe in fairies. But why do you ask? Excuse me. And she says, then she gives me an even harder look. Because I have one on my thumb, she says to me. See, Sonny wants to see it. And so I can't see a thing. I'm looking at her thumb and I just see a thumb. And I'm like, that's really strange, honey. I try to like shift my consciousness. I'm like, maybe if I can leave my body for a minute, maybe if I can use auric sight. I don't know. Maybe if I can open my chakras. I don't see anything. I just see her thumb. I'm like, you know what? I don't see it, but let me go get the camera, because sometimes a camera will capture images that the naked eye cannot see. So I go and I have to go hunt the camera, and she's patiently waiting with the fairy on her thumb. And it takes me a few minutes, 4 or 5 minutes. Finally, I come back with the camera and I snap a picture. Just one picture. If I'd have known the picture was going to come out, I would have snapped a dozen, But I just snapped one picture. And this was in the days when you had cameras that relied on film. So we didn't develop that film for a couple months, maybe. When we finally, several months later, got the film back, there's the picture of her looking down, and on her thumb, about, let's see.
Let me stop sharing screen so they can see it. How big your report? There we go.
About that big, just right on top of her thumb, there's this little blue light, and it's this big. It's a centimeter. It's about 3 centimeters, and part of it is light blue, part of it is sort of a medium blue, and part of it is a dark blue. And
oh wow!
And it's translucent. You can see through it, and it's sort of flame shaped, like a little candle flame. But she's looking right at it, and there's clearly something there.
Right.
And she's telling me, I've got a fairy on my thumb. Do you believe in them? And so I've got this picture of a fairy.
It occurs to me that, because I've always theorized that kids, because they're closer, they're closer to innocence because they're younger, they don't have enough conditioning or being told and programmed that, oh no, that's not real, because they're still in touch with their true nature. I have a strong belief that humanity is human beings. As human beings, we have we're unique in that we are able to create our own reality through our thoughts and we quite literally manifest it. But because we've been conditioned to believe that certain things are, we've lost touch with.
Right.
And so it's long been my belief that kids, the reason that they have imaginary friends and so on and such is because they're more open and they're able to see through the different layers of dimensions and even different layers of reality that exist beyond the veil of what we're able to physically see. Because we know that we only see a small spectrum of the universe.
Right. And physicists also now are saying things that kind of align with what the mystics used to say 1,000 years ago, and 100 years ago, 300 years ago. And those things are that your thoughts are capable, that the whole universe is energy. All right. Now this is science. The whole universe is energy.
Yes.
When you look at subatomic particles, what you're actually seeing is charges, relationships between positive and negative charges, and the thing that gives them form is observing those charges. That is the process of taking something that's formless and then arranging perception so that it picks out certain qualities and highlights those and leaves behind the background qualities that it's not highlighting. So the process of observation is creating the reality.
You're talking about the double slit experiment.
Huh? Yeah, it is.
You're talking about the double slit experiment, pretty much.
Yeah,
that's
where
very similar to what's described in that. What you're describing, it's very much resonates with that from what I'm gathering.
Yeah, and that's the physics behind the idea that observation creates
observation creates the change in the particle itself.
Right.
It's the act of observing.
And if you were looking at it from a different point of view, it would be the same thing, the same phenomenon, but appear differently.
Yep.
So in the universe, there are all of these things that are, but all of its energy. So none of them have a firm, defined form. they're all in a kind of a potential state. Now they do exist. They're just as real as you and I, but they're not as real as you and I until something or someone observes or perceives them.
Like Schrodinger's cat.
Right. Is the cat alive or is the cat dead? We don't know until we open the box.
Mm-hmm.
But we know there's a cat.
In both states.
Yeah, it's in both states. Yeah, until if we and that is because that's the nature of the universe. All these people that are saying, well, there's fairies, they're describing something that's absolutely just as real as the person that's saying, well, there's a cat in the box. Because reality is struck, because all possible realities, everything that's conceivable, everything that's imaginable is in its potential state, and the process of conceiving of it is the first step that manifests things. It's the highest frequency of manifestation, because if you have an idea, let's say I'm primitive man and I say I really want to sit down, and I am sitting on rocks and I go, wouldn't it be nice if I could have something flat and solid to sit on? And I have figured out tools and I start messing with a stump, and pretty soon I've made myself a chair. It's because I thought, wouldn't it be nice to have something to sit on? I'm seeing this image in my mind. I'm at the first stage of the creation process, and the chair already exists in my visualization. And because that data is passed down in the electromagnetic patterns of my genetics to my heirs, and a million years later, my heirs are making complicated furniture. That complicated furniture is already existent in the potential that I saw when I said, let me turn this stump, let me carve out the core of this stump and make a chair or make a canoe. And, the canoe precursors the battleship, but they both existed at the moment somebody thought, I'm going to make a boat.
Well, very good explanation. I love how you describe that, because you're right. Like if you want to look at it from the Schrodinger's cat perspective, until it's observed, it's in both states. It already exists, and it also doesn't. But it's in both until it is observed by an observer. And
of course, the thing that
it's one of the funny things quantum mechanics people didn't expect when they figured that out, or when they realized that was what was going on. It threw scientists off. They were not expecting that.
And the thing that matters to us as just ordinary human beings trying to live our lives is that this principle applies throughout everything, everywhere, in all of creation. So your thinking actually is creating structures that are finer dimensional, higher dimensional realities that, and here's where Einstein's equation, E = mc squared, comes in, because energy equals matter at an extremely accelerated pace, which is matter times the speed of light times the speed of light. If you multiply the frequency of matter by this incredible amount, then it is light. Matter and energy are equal at different rates of vibration.
Yes, right? Everything's frequency. Everything is frequency.
Right. So if you have this imagined thing that you go, wouldn't it be lovely? But you hold that frequency, what you're doing is you're doing two things. You're slowing down the frequency of the thing that's at the light, but you're raising up your frequency to that frequency. And when those frequencies match, that's the reality that you're in.
You know what? That's a perfect description of what we as human beings need to do, because I believe we're all going through an ascension process right now, where everybody's awakening and they're becoming aware of, and we're starting to vibrate at a higher frequency, and I believe we're transitioning from third density through fourth into fifth. Is my belief on that, and I see it. I mean, I see it. I can see it coming, you know. And but just in how many people are awake now, and just how many people see through the bullshit, and how the facade isn't bullshitting anybody anymore. People are waking up to that, and we need to raise our frequency to match that of where we're going or where we intend to go.
Right. I mean, I found this really interesting podcast. My daughter introduced me to it, called the Telepathy Tapes. Everyone should go look it up, and probably enjoy listening to it.
About that. I'm gonna have to go check that out.
And apparently, a lot of autistic kids their parents were discovering that the autistic kids could read their minds. They'd like hide the potato chips, but they couldn't hide them from Junior. And it was like
they're all gone now.
one after another thing that they'd just be like, holy cow, how did he know? How did she know? And then they start, these kids are given tablets and things, ability to communicate, many of them nonverbal, and they start talking about what's going on with them, and they're like visiting each other when they're, they lay down in bed, cover their head with 7 pillows, and then they come back and say, yeah, I just spent the most fun time that I've had in a long time with all the people on the hill. Where's the hill? Well, it's where all of us that don't use words, but use thought language, speak and talk with each other, and
wow. That's so
and of
cool.
course, the mystics and the shamans, the psychics, the holy men, that these holy women have been talking to angels and talking about the potentials of what the human mind can do for all of time. And we have inherently, because the pineal gland is this stack of crystals in our brain, and crystals have the ability to attune to vibrations, to frequencies. And there used to be a thing called a crystal radio, and all I had was a quartz crystal in it and a little thing.
I did one of those a couple times growing up.
Yeah,
when I was first into electronics.
Yeah, and so if you've got this stack of crystals in your brain, and then you've got this biodynamic magnetic energy field, magnetoelectric energy field around it, it's the life field, then you're able to both broadcast and receive all huge ranges of frequencies. Any frequency you can broadcast and receive. So if you're a very highly evolved human, like a Christ or a Buddha, you're emanating. This is why you see the saints with an aura around their head, with a halo around their head, is because they're emanating so powerfully, because their aura has become potentized by vibrating at the highest frequencies and cleansing until the whole instrument is able to carry much higher amperage, much more power than what is ordinary. And so we all have this potential of being able to up the amps because we can tune into those frequencies. Well, those people are emanating those frequencies. All we have to do is tune to those frequencies. This is what darshan is. When you go and you sit at the feet of the holy man, or you do your prayers and meditate on Mother Mary or Jesus or whoever it is you meditate on. You're attuning to their frequencies and receiving those broadcasts, and now you'll reach the state where you're hearing the angels, where you're hearing the ascended beings, where you're able to communicate interstellar and intergalactic, because you're no longer thinking of your consciousness as something that's in your head. You're understanding that consciousness is the energy field
more than
that you are tuning into. And all of, when I was young, I thought, well, I want to be able to learn as much as I can so that I have this body of knowledge. And eventually I realized, wait a minute, I don't have to own any of it, because I have already access to all of it. All I have to do is tune in, and I can see any place in the universe.
As the Akashic records, folks, in case you don't.
Right. There is a record of every frequency that's ever been recorded in the entire universal field, and all we have to do is tune to that frequency, and we have that information. It's already within us because we're not a body, we're a
Right.
field.
We've got about 9 minutes before they open that hatch.
Excellent.
So we're running time. I'm going to resume the audio so we can see what happens.
Excellent.
I hope we have a safe and productive journey home too.
Yeah, man.
Why isn't this thing reacting? Oh my God, it's freaking lagging so bad. There we go.
Good read back.
I just want to give a shout out to the Rumble viewers we have watching. Thank you for participating in this spontaneous live. We really appreciate it.
Crew inside.
And all our viewers everywhere else.
Open up that hatch. Of course, the crew Expedition 72 crew has gone through their procedures to safely open up the hatch. You saw a couple of photographs. You see in frame there on the bottom left, Yvonne Wagner doing some closeout photography, as well as a few of the other Expedition 72 crew. Now it's up to the Crew-10 cadre to open up the Dragon hatch. Once that hatch is open, all hatches between the two spacecraft will be open and Crew-10 will be able to float through. Now, oftentimes, there has been a gap in time from when the Dragon hatch is open to when we actually see the crew float through. It will be at the crew's discretion and the timeline that they have with the Hawthorne teams on some of the closeout procedures that are necessary inside the Dragon cabin before they can say yea verily that they can float through and be welcomed, start the ceremony. So we'll just stand by, listen in, see how they're doing, and follow along. We're continuing our nonstop coverage of Crew-10's arrival aboard the International Space Station ahead of a formal welcome ceremony as Crew-10 joins Expedition 72.
SpaceX Dragon, hatch is open.
SpaceX copies, hatch open at 0535 UTC.
And there it is, confirmation that the Dragon hatch is open. That
6
time of
minutes
hatch
till hatch.
opening is 12:35 a.m. Central Time.
Well, I guess it's already open.
16th, 2025.
The Dragon hatch, anyway. Well, we'll see here in a minute.
Man. Sunny looks like she's on pins and needles, man. Just So excited and can't wait.
You can't wait to get out of that capsule, out of that
No
space
kidding.
station.
No kidding. No kidding. She is so ready to go.
I mean, she was practically dancing earlier. Like,
Yeah, I know. Dancing in space, man. Dancing in 5 dimensions.
I mean, since there's no gravity, pretty much like it is, huh? You know, just
yeah. Man, oh man. Whew. I suppose if you think in terms of, oh man, I'm stretching my mind thinking about 5 dimensions. Because you've got the 3 spatial dimensions, the 4th dimension of time, and the 5th dimension of consciousness.
That's one way of looking at it for sure.
Yeah.
I'd say that once you realize that you create your reality, you begin to resonate at more of a 4 or 5D freaking resonance anyway. Once you really have that realization, we'll say you.
Yeah. Once, well, you realize that that it's not the way it always seemed, which is me and the universe. You realize it's not that way. You realize that you're actually integrated with the universe. You're already the universe is you. You are the universe in an extension way. We're an extension of each other. Consciousness isn't contained in your brain and body. It is the area of frequencies that, this is a frequency attunement device, the human body. And the realities that we're experiencing are the ones that we've essentially been conditioned to mostly and conditioned ourselves to. And the vast majority of that is been conditioned to, which is why if you do not believe in fairies, I can show you a picture of a fairy and you're going to go, that can't be what that is. I mean, literally, I've had people that were like, that must be a small insect. That must be something else. It can't be what you're telling me it is. And
right. No matter, you're right though. There's people that are so conditioned that no matter what you show them, they're never going to believe it.
Right.
And it's okay. That's their choice, and they're right. But it's frustrating at times, I can imagine.
Oh, sure.
I know.
Well, there's a story that I read about the Trobriand Islanders. The Trobriand Islanders? You may or may not know the story.
Sounds vaguely familiar, but go ahead.
The Trobriand Islanders lived in the Trobriand Islands, and the Trobriand Islands were out in the middle of the ocean, and they didn't see hardly anybody from anywhere much at all. So they pretty much lived on the Trobriand Islands as in their own culture and their own society, and they were what we would call primitive people, but or people indigenous to the land. They're in perfect harmony with their environment. They're extraordinarily intelligent about how things work in their world. Well, one day a battleship.
Well, I wouldn't call that primitive. I'd call that advanced. If you're asking about this context of being in balance with nature and choosing to live in harmony with nature as opposed to in disharmony with it.
Which is why I elaborated on that, because I come from a culture that does not have a good linguistic description for those extraordinarily highly intelligent beings that are kind of advanced forward from the rather undeveloped state of modern man, which would be like the Trobriand Islanders. So, but an interesting thing happened. One day, civilization shows up in the form of a gigantic battleship. and the battleship has,
yes,
lifeboats.
I've heard this story. Yes.
And the boats, it sends down the lifeboats. The lifeboats dry up, paddle into shore, and the Trobriand Islanders are, give them whatever greeting they do to strangers, and and they're like, you need some food. What can we do for you? And so they meet these soldiers that come out of these small boats, and they say, "Where did you come from? We didn't see you come." They're like, "We came from that battleship over there." And the Islanders look and don't see anything there. They don't see any battleship. It doesn't exist for them. And none of them see this gigantic battleship sitting in the ocean right there in front of them. And this goes on for a few days. And finally, and all these sailors are telling them, yeah, there's a battleship. And they go to it and they come back, they get stuff and bring it back and, take care. And the Trobriand Islanders are just like, wow, this is amazing. They seem to vanish and then they reappear because they can see the small boats. And then an old shaman, an old wise man, climbs up to the top of a hill and he's looking out and he's observing the ocean. And of course, they know everything about the ocean tides. And he realizes there's an aberration in the way the waves are forming in the ocean in a particular area. And when he recognizes that, he realizes something must be there to cause that aberration in the way the waves are flowing, and he sees the battleship. It becomes visible to him because now it fits into his understanding of the world and how it works. Now, because he understands waves and wave forms in the ocean, and he knows that if they're disrupted, he knows what that looks like. So he knows there has to be something there, and that allows his mind to open up to the possibility of, well, what can be there that I was unable to see before? And now
all of a sudden he can see it.
Right.
Because it fits into his worldview.
So I would like to submit to you and our listeners that there are all kinds of things all around us that we don't see because we are culturally conditioned to believe that doesn't exist.
I think I have a real world example that I can describe and relate to everyone that everyone's experienced that touches on that very subject that you just meant, that the way you just described it, not being able to perceive it versus being able to perceive it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever looked for something like your car keys or something that you're looking for, your wallet, whatever it may be, and you can't seem to find it no matter where you look? You go and you look in one particular place, it's not there. You go, you look in another place, then you come back to that other place you just looked at, and all of a sudden it's right there. Have you ever had that happen? Yeah. I've had that happen so many times, and I'm like, how in the fuck did it? I just looked here, it wasn't there. It's your right mind is tuning it out because you're not expecting to see it there.
This right here, okay? I use this to hold my cigarettes when I smoke. And the other day, I thought I put it in my pocket, but then I couldn't find it. And I thought, well, maybe I put it down somewhere. I searched my car. I searched my desk. I searched all the desks in the house, walked, dug through my pockets several times. Well, that's where it was. But it took me many hours of searching everywhere to find it.
And it looks like they've opened the hatch. Oh, go ahead. Wow. Continue.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Look. Yeah.
Let me put the audio on real quick. I don't
want to
miss
people. Oh, this is astounding. What a moment.
Well, I guess we got no sound anyway. They're just video feed. So, all right. It's all right.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. I'm in good shape for this.
Yeah, this is pretty cool.
She's like ready to go. Sunny's ready to go. She's like, ready. Let's get out of here.
She's like the girl at the party that's standing next to the door going, are we ready to go, honey? Oh, man.
This is great.
How phenomenal. How amazing. Now, this is a party, man.
Yeah.
A space party.
A space party.
Oh, golly. Oh, I
He's
bet
about to
they've
pick
got
on
some
off the
music
wall.
playing.
He's gonna go woo,
Yeah.
propel himself across the room diagonally.
Yeah. Go vertical at any moment, you know.
Hey, you want to talk? You go ahead. You say a few words. She says.
Man, oh
She's like,
man.
I'm ready to go home. I don't got. All I got to say is get me home. That's probably what she's saying.
No kidding. They probably cut the audio because there's some cussing going on.
Who knows?
They're like, they're having such a party.
Crew-10, welcome aboard the SS.
We got some.
Yes. Those were the Russian cosmonauts. That was one of the Russian cosmonauts just speaking.
Yeah.
Welcoming Crew-10
everybody down there on Earth.
to the ISS.
Is the receiver?
Oh, yeah, we're on.
Okay, got it. Okay.
All right,
They
I thought,
changed it the last minute.
Got it.
thought I lost my touch there for a sec. Hey, Crew-10 has had a great journey up here, about 28 hours to get back up to the space station, and I cannot tell you the immense joy of our crew when we looked out the window and we saw the space station for the first time. Returning for a couple of people, very first time for a couple of people. And let me tell you, that is such an amazing journey. You can hardly even put it into words. The ride up on the Falcon 9, orbiting the Earth for the last couple of days, it's been absolutely incredible, and it is something that none of us could do by ourselves. As we've said before, you cannot be great without the greatness of others, and I tell you, the greatness of the ground control teams have really shined through in the last few days getting us up here safely. Thank you very, very much.
Hey, from the bottom of my heart, thanks to our families, friends, and our colleagues from all the partners, SpaceX, NASA, CSA, ESA, Roscosmos, and JAXA for preparing us and making it possible for us to get here. And we are so excited to now be officially part of the Expedition 72. Thank you guys. And I want to say a couple of words in Japanese from here. 日本の皆さん応援ありがとうございました。元気にここまで ISS まで帰ってくることができました。明日からまた一生懸命希望でのサイエンスと含めていろんなタスクを頑張っていきたいと思います。ぜひ応援よろしくお願いします。
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot one more time to SpaceX and NASA for this wonderful ride. That was really fun. And thanks to all the world's aerospace industry, which works to make the dreams to come true and to take us further and further. That's really wonderful. Thanks to everyone working there. И спасибо, конечно же, отдельно это Роскосмосу и Центру подготовки космонавтов за знания и опыт, которые привели меня сюда. Будем работать славно, работать дружно во имя, во благо всего человечества. Передаю микрофон. Потерялся.
I'd like to just say again, thank you to SpaceX for the awesome ride up here. As a rookie, that was one of the coolest things I've ever done, and I can't wait to get to work up here. So excited for the 4 pilots and us that just got to get to space together, and now we're 4 astronauts together. So thank you to all of our friends and families, and thank you to all of the instructors and all of the ground teams who got us here. Can't wait to get started.
And Houston, thank you for tuning in this early morning. It was a wonderful day. Great to see our friends arrive. So thank you so much.
Thanks to all participants. We are now resuming
I was being funny, folks. That's why I waved to just be silly.
We're waving from cyberspace.
They're waving from space. We're waving from cyberspace.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, that's great. Well,
Wasn't
there
there
you
a,
have it, folks.
wasn't there a cyberspace called Spaces for a while?
I think there was. I don't know. Are you talking about MySpace?
MySpace. I'm
There
over
was
here with
MySpace.
MySpace.
That's pretty much obsolete now. Nobody even uses that anymore.
No. Well, I don't know. I hang out on MySpace, but I'm usually alone. Oh my. Wow, that was incredible. Well, Stephen, I appreciate your
Yeah.
inviting me to ride along for this incredible ride. This has been really fun.
Yeah, no, I figured we should broadcast it. I mean, hell, they waited 9 months. I figured the least we could do is wait a few hours to watch them get home safe, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it really got my wheels turning thinking about being out in space. You could tell I'm talking about all kinds of things, but
Well, that's where my head is at most of the time, anyways, out there, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
That's my background, you know?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I these are things that I think about a lot, and and it's so far from the mainstream culture that it's rarely that I ever feel like there's someone that's interested enough that I can talk about it and talk to about these things. You know, it's like the knowledge about trampolining and how it relates to NASA and how it relates to space travel. How
You put it all together. They're really good. Like you
and
really integrated every aspect of science, knowledge, physics, biology, training, space exploration. Like you put it all in the context. I thought that was great.
Well, that's the thing. It's like I spend my time thinking about a lot of these things and then researching things and learning about things. And then I got nothing to do with it until the day comes when we're looking at a bunch of people floating in space. I'm like, hey, did you know this? Hey, did you know this?
Right. It's like these kind of spontaneous moments are the gateway to those conversations.
Right. And so I'm very grateful and glad that I could, be here to shed a little bit of light on some other things that
Or being an intellectual sometimes.
Well, it can be because I mean, who you got to talk to about stuff? You start talking.
It's funny, obviously, just there. I was making a pun, but yeah, that's true. Though it can be.
You talk to some of the people around you. They're like, "Man, I'm making eggs. Leave me alone."
They don't know what you're talking about, and then you feel like you're speaking Japanese to everybody, and then you're like, "Okay, over that head."
Yeah, I mean, the number of people on the planet that understood what the Japanese man said there is minuscule compared to the number of people that saw that broadcast. But that culture is a whole culture that's built around a whole different worldview. And that different worldview has possibilities that don't exist in ours, and we have possibilities that don't exist in theirs, and you have possibilities that don't exist in me, and I have possibilities that don't exist in you, and every single person, that's true. And so it's important that we discover the possibilities for each of us. And that's, what do we think?
I think that in the process of doing that, we're going to unlock the barriers that prevent us from having we're going to unlock and get rid of all the impossibilities by recognizing that. We're going to start to realize that, well, once I realize that it's just a way of looking at things and I can change the way I look at things and see different possibilities from different perspectives, that's when we're really going to evolve, I think.
Well, I think it's interesting that you chose to use the word, we can unlock the barriers, because the actual reality is that there are no barriers anywhere to consciousness. Consciousness exists, and that energy that consciousness is made up of is the same energy that the universe is made up of. And there isn't a dividing line between any single consciousness and the rest of consciousness. There's no dividing line. So the barriers only exist because of our perspective that there are barriers. As soon as we really understand that our consciousness is already to the fullness of consciousness, and there's nowhere where any barrier can obstruct it. We are in the heart of the sun. We are in the deepest parts of the far-blown galaxies. We are in the heart of the atom. We're, in the minuscule mitochondria of the cells. We're in the DNA. We're in the RNA, but we're not. We're in the DNA of the cosmos. We're in the spinning,
it's all connected.
Circling of the galaxies. It's all connected. It's all part of who and what we are. So the limits exist in our thinking.
Touching on what you just said there, dovetailing right off of it, something that I told someone once a long time ago when they saw something that they didn't think was possible, and then upon seeing it, they said, I guess the sky really is the limit. And I told them, I said, no, the sky is not the limit. There are no limits.
Yeah. I think that's a good note to end.
I agree. Good night, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate you watching our live, especially those on Rumble. We really appreciate it. We had a pretty good number of live viewers on Rumble today.
Great. Thank you all. We appreciate you very much. Thank you.
We appreciate it. Good night, everyone.